In a society where the media controls the narrative while placing a muzzle on the mouths of the incarcerated, my co-hosts and I are the voices for the incarcerated. It's no longer on the media to tell our stories. It's on us. Hashtag because it is. Welcome to On Us, man. You know what I'm saying? Introduce yourself and tell us how you're going to bless the platform.
Yeah, my name is Dortel Williams, and I'm at in Blythe at Chuckawalla, California. And I just want to talk about trauma. I want to talk about trauma before we come to prison, while we're in prison, and what trauma is, what the implications of it is.
Okay, trauma. So
yeah.
Let's start off. If you want to share, why you're incarcerated, how long you've been down, and the trauma that it caused you, or the trauma that it once caused you, and that you are able to help people, with that trauma just based on your circumstances.
So I've been down 34 years. I was sentenced to life without. And my trauma started off, and this is, I want to make it clear, this is not an excuse. It's an explanation, because I think it's really important that people understand the link between trauma and criminal behavior, self-harm. The bottom line is hurt people, and I'll explain that in a moment. But in my case, I grew up with a father who was abusive, a lot of domestic violence in the house. He called me stupid, just doing normal childhood things. And that affected my self-esteem. So I remember a few times I went to school and I had fallen behind. I couldn't concentrate. And if anybody out there knows what ACEs is, adverse childhood experiences, I'll explain that in a moment. But at the time, that's what I was being affected by and didn't realize it. So I couldn't concentrate. And as I was falling behind, kids started calling me stupid, calling me dumb, and they were basically reinforcing what my father was calling me. So that's what I believe myself to be: dumb, stupid, worthless. So finally, I got enough of it, and I responded in a violent way. I beat up a couple of guys, and I noticed that they respected me after that. They pulled back, all the teasing and all that stopped, and so. That to me was a message that this is a good social strategy. This is the way you deal with things, with violence. So as I grew up, harming people obviously now was not a problem. I began to sell drugs, do all kinds of things to our community, not recognizing the harm I was causing. And one thing led to another, and I committed the worst act that a person can commit, which is murder. So here I am. So let me generalize how trauma works, and how not only to kind of help people understand my circumstances, but why they say hurt people.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example of a chair. It's a simple analogy, but a person goes to sit in a chair. I go to sit in a chair, and the chair breaks. And so we're going to talk about the event, the feeling, and the reaction. So when the chair breaks, that's the event. And then the reaction is people might have laughed at me. I feel embarrassed. I'm scared, whatever the case may be. And from that point on, it's a really subtle thing, but you start to think different. You don't even notice it, but you start to think different. So now I'm thinking, I don't trust chairs anymore. I'm checking to see if somebody else sits in the chairs are going to break. The whole shot. I've changed things I never would have thought of if it hadn't been for that event.
So is it just one event that changed things, or it changed the whole thought process, period?
It depends. For me, it was that one chair. Or for instance, if I really went deep with it, if it was domestic violence and me watching my mom get beat down, I might say to myself, I'll never let that happen again. When I get bigger, I'm going to do whatever. And then the next thing you know, when I'm 15, I'm buying a gun. And I don't link me buying the gun to me saying that to myself when I'm a young kid. It's very subtle. But that reaction now is part of me, and it's how I think, right? And it could be. So I'm talking about me striking out on other people. But now, say for instance, I victimized somebody else, and now the victim. So I'm saying hurt people. Now the victim that I hurt, they want to hurt somebody, or they want to hurt me, and they say, I want that person to suffer the maximum amount of law. Whatever the law entails, whatever we can give them the worst, whether it's the death penalty, life without, whatever it is, I want them to suffer the most. That's hurt people hurting people. And what we do is it's like a contagion. The way society is set up now, we don't intervene with kids, we don't help people, we just want to hurt other people. And so you have the situation where I'm hurting people because I don't understand what I'm going through. Nobody's intervening. And what I do to the victim, the system says, well, if we put them in prison, this, that, and the other, but there's no healing in that. You understand what I'm saying? Exactly. And that's the problem. Nobody's healing. So now my family is hurting, my friends are hurting, and you have all these hurt people. So it doesn't always have to be a violent response like what I did, but it could also be when hurt people turn on against themselves. So they go to escapism, they use alcohol, drugs, that type of thing. Or in worst case scenario, they might do cutting or they might commit suicide. And where I'm getting this information, and I really would recommend that anybody read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I've been studying trauma. The Body Keeps the Score. It's by Bessel van der Kolk. Bessel van der Kolk. Yeah. And he really explains it. I've read a lot of books on trauma. It's one of the things I've been studying for a few years now, trauma and emotions. And it's one of the easiest books to really understand trauma. But he talks about, people coming to prison. He talks about our ability to heal. And, the problem with life without is the assumption is that we are incorrigible. You'll never change. And a lot of us, we get that sense when we're 18 years old, 19 years old. I was 23. And so we're, from right off the bat, we're never really given a chance to, it kind of reinforces that we're no good.
Okay, so with the, excuse me, so the new laws don't affect the life without, even though you guys are, changing for the better and help changing others, y'all get no action, huh?
No, not recognized one bit at all.
Okay.
Any of the laws, the youth offender laws, the elderly parole laws, none of those laws fit us. We're excluded from everything. Okay. But, I just push anyway. The challenge for me, having to come into prison with a low self-esteem, was, am I really worth nothing? And so, fortunately, I got some mentors. They kind of built me back up. They showed me, what my weaknesses were. And over the years, I've earned 4 AA degrees, a paralegal certificate, a BA in communications through Cal State, and now at this moment I'm studying for a master's degree in humanities at Cal State Dominguez Hills. So I'm not an aberration. There's a lot of people in here that are doing really well, and for the few that got commuted who had life without, that got out, they're thriving. They're doing great. So I believe anybody can change, and I think that the most important thing is just basically recognizing that we have to be empathetic to one another. We have to intervene in people's lives, because if we don't, we're all welcome to time bombs to some extent, whether we're hurting ourselves or hurting other people.
Yes, sir. We had 36 seconds, so if you can come back on and take us in a little deeper into hurt people for some of the viewers who can't comprehend that. If you could break it down in a little simple form, the psychology behind it, and how did you come to grips with that knowledge of yours, and what it took for you to want to study that kind of knowledge, or study that topic, period, dealing with trauma. What led you to want to study that?
Okay, yes, sir.
All right, so I want to ask you how old were you when you recognized, that it was trauma in your life, or did you have to go to jail and reflect back on your life to realize that a lot of your actions or reactions came from the state of being traumatized?
Yeah, no, I didn't figure it out until I came to prison, and it was years later where I got in the right environment and I had mentors that I was able to change. And if anybody's ever read the book Malcolm X's autobiography, it was a trip when I read his book, which had a lot to do with why I changed the way I was thinking, because I was a drug dealer and I was unaffiliated, so I felt like I had to compete with the gang members that I was selling drugs with, and this, that, and the other. So I was willing to do anything to keep them at bay, show them what time it was with me, and all that was self-esteem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what I saw in his book, Malcolm X's book, was that I was part of the problem. When I read his book, I said, okay, now I see I'm selling poison to our community. Our community is already up against it with laws and the way we treat it and so on and so forth. And that's when I began to wake up. So that was the first thing, just basically recognizing that I was the problem. But then I took this parenting class. I've always been a curious person. So I took this parenting class, and the parenting class showed me that the domestic violence, the cursing at each other, all of that, the vicious whoopings and all of that, that's not normal. Without any comparison, I thought that was normal.
Yeah.
But once I was able to see that this is not normal, that's when I began to really wake up. So then I was exposed to this class called the Catalyst. The Catalyst Project.
The Catalyst Project.
And, Catalyst, yeah. And starts with a C. And it basically explained what trauma was, right? And so what I just talked about, with the technical term for it is called trauma reenactment. And Oprah Winfrey talks about it in her book. Oprah Winfrey and Bruce Perry, and they call the book What Happened to You. And it's the same thing. The way we approach it now is what's wrong with you, which labels, something's wrong with me, I'm stupid, all that type of thing. And you respond to that. You are what you think you are. Exactly. But when people ask what happened to you, now you got me thinking, what did happen to me? Why am I responding the way I am? Why am I not being normal? And those questions is what basically set me on this trajectory.
Okay, so it sounds like, just by your intellect alone, your wisdom of things, you have any outside programs that you got, or any, places that you could be reached, or any, that if people have questions or want to, get in touch with what you got going on, you have any shout outs to that, or whether you could be reached or anything of that matter?
Yeah, I got an email address. It's Dortel, D as in David, O-R-T as in Terry, E-L-L Williams at 860, it's 860 at Gmail. So Dortel Williams, 860 at Gmail. Yeah.
Dortel Williams, 860 at gmail.com.
Yes, sir.
Okay, for sure. So just, I don't deal with the hypothetically speaking or playing a game of hyperbole, but if you was released into society, off the dribble, what you have to offer society?
Several things. So for one, I come with empathy. I believe I push empathy in here, and it's odd because this is an apathetic place, whether it's from the guards or whether it's from us. As a culture, it's just apathetic. And I push against that with empathy. And what I mean by empathy is basically like putting myself in somebody else's shoes. Like, for instance, even the guards. Why is this dude tripping on me the way he's tripping on me? It can't be personal because he doesn't know me. So maybe he's traumatized. Maybe he had a bad day. And that helps me pull back and understand what he's going through, not take it personal, and push on with my day. Because the bottom line is, whether it's road rage or somebody abusing their authority, whatever it is that they're going through is their problem, and until we adopt it, it's their problem. And that's how I live day by day.
Okay, for sure. So in most cases, me being once on the in and now being on the out, I know that it's a great percentage of people think that because we incarcerated, that's when we become educated or spiritual or a changed man, even though change is inevitable. How do you address that matter as an individual, not collectively like we all saying the same thing, but how do you stand aside from that thought process from other people? What sets you aside?
Well, for one, again, empathy, right? And so empathy tells me, don't criticize.
Okay.
Right? That's right off the top. Let's not criticize the person. Let's build them up. If they're about religion and they changed in prison, if that's what it took, or they became studious in prison, why criticize that? As long as they're on the right track, that should be encouraged, right? But on top of that, like you said, it's inevitable for us to mature and grow. For most of us, it happens automatically. But if a person is doing the work, you can't fake. You can't fake intelligence. You're gonna sound smart, and you're gonna reflect on what you read because you actually absorbed it, and now it's coming out, right?
Exactly.
And most of us, when we go to the board, that's why we can't fake the funk with the board, because they recognize what's real and what isn't. They recognize, and now so let me just break it down like this. The board will ask, are you remorseful? And what does it mean? And we can say yes all day long. I'm remorseful, this, that, and other. We can drop the crocodile tears. But if you don't know what remorse really means and it doesn't reflect in your life, they're going to shoot you down, right? And so what I mean by that is, there's three components of remorse.
Okay.
All of them are about amends. All of them are about amends. So you have direct amends, which is, well, first of all, let me break down remorse. Remorse is feeling so bad for what you did that you want to give back, that you want to change, right? And so I've been on this trajectory for most of my career in prison, 34 years. I've been trying to do the right thing. I had a couple of hiccups, bad decisions, but that's just part of the growth process, right?
Exactly.
Nevertheless, I felt so bad for what I did, taking a life, that I've always wanted to give back. So that was what made me say, okay, I got to look at myself. I need to change. I recognized that I was a danger to the community, that I was harming my own community, that I took somebody's life. I can't give it back, and I hurt innumerable people, right? So that's the first part of remorse. Then it's about action. If I feel bad, what am I going to do about it? So the first thing is, now this is according to them. People express remorse in different ways outside of the book, but inside the book, which I agree with, is direct amends. If you can give back to the person directly that you hurt, it's all good. That's direct amends. The second is indirect amends. If you can't, like in my case, I can't, I give back to society. I mentor in here. I try to change myself. I'm a big part of the community out there, trying to, be an example for people, trying to help heal people. I do a lot of work with victims. That's how I give back. And then there's living amends. And the living amends is the most important one, because that's the one that not only the board, but anybody can see. When I was on the street, I had a reputation. I was crazy deep. That was my reputation.
Okay.
Today, I'm Dortel, and I have a reputation of being empathetic, being out the way, being peaceful. That's my reputation. So my living amends has got to match with that. In other words, is what I'm claiming consistent with what I'm doing?
We're gonna hang up, but I think we'll have time for another one. But on our way back, once you return, a lot of youngsters think mentoring is what they consider a streak, or I don't need no OG to be somebody be telling me something or what to do. If in your own terms and own words, what does the word mentoring mean to you?
Okay.
We was interrupted. I talked to a few of these young brothers up out here, and a lot of them feel like mentor is like taboo, or man, I don't need no old school sitting down telling me nothing and blah 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 blah. And you know, when I was young, I was trying to, you know, put myself in their mindset, you know, moving the veil of ignorance and put myself in their shoes. So the word mentor is, you know, kind of a strange word to some of us. What would be not the definition of the dictionary, but what is your personal definition of mentoring?
Like I said earlier, iron sharpens iron, right? So I would just when I holler at the youth in the neighborhood, and we get on that tip, is the bottom line is this: you can't have football without a mentor. You got to have somebody to school you, somebody to lead you, somebody to help you. You can't be in the neighborhood without a mentor, because somebody got to school you, somebody got to give you your hookup, whatever, right? So in every aspect of life, you're gonna have a mentor.
Exactly.
Now, if it's a positive thing, maybe that's what they're trying to shape. But the positivity is what's going to get you over the hill. And if you like any of these rappers that's out there doing swell, they had mentors. They're on a positive trip. And you know, I know I keep bringing up Malcolm X, but for me, like I said, he was a pivotal figure in my transformation. And I think that a lot of youth, they look at Malcolm X as kind of a square. I mean, they kind of look at Malcolm X as like, it's confusing between a square and like, who was he, right? Mm-hmm. Malcolm X came from the streets, just like a lot of us.
Yes, sir.
His street name was Detroit Red.
Yes, sir.
And he knew what time it was. But at the same time, he was square. He wore glasses. He spoke white, because when he needed to go talk to the UN or to bankers or whoever he needed to talk to. But at the same time, when he went to the neighborhood, he could talk the talk, right? So I use him as an example of how to be versatile. We see the same thing for people who like Jay-Z. Same exact thing. Exactly. Wears glasses, can talk white, can go up there and make deals, $1 million deals. You have to be versatile. And so I would tell any youth, you either want to fail or you want to succeed. And if you want to succeed, then you have to look at what successful people do. That's it. You can pick your own mentor. It could be a book, like for me, or it could be a live person. But at some point, human beings learn from other human beings, whether it's negative or positive. Pick your mentor, pick your choice, pick your success. That's the bottom line.
Okay, when we're speaking on trauma, and we know that it stems from our childhood, can trauma be overcome, or is it constantly a continuous, perpetual battle that one will have for the rest of their life?
Absolutely, it could be overcome. I overcame mine. So for some people, so there's a lady named Brene Brown. No, not Brene Brown. There's another one. I can't think of her name right now, but she talks about big T traumas and little T traumas. There's different stages or different levels of trauma. So the big T trauma might be witnessing a murder or murdering somebody else. But a lot of people are under the misconception that just because we do the act doesn't mean we can't be traumatized from it. But that's true. So you have the big T traumas, then you have the little T traumas, like being told that you're never going to amount to anything, or being called a name, or getting sick, right, and thinking you're going to die. Those could be little T traumas. But another variable is resilience. Everybody has different resilience. I could have a twin we could go through the same experiences and he might bounce back faster than me, or he might not even be affected by it like I was. So it all depends on the person. But trauma absolutely can be overcome, and it's up to us as individuals to not only believe that, but seek your own healing. That doesn't mean that you should be your own doctor and diagnose yourself, but read about it, learn about it. I done dropped a couple of names: Brene Brown, James Gilligan, Bessel van der Kolk. There's a bunch of names out there for trauma. As a matter of fact, Fritzi Hortzman is another one that's coming up with the Prison Compassion Project. Look her up. She keeps it really, really simple. But anybody can heal from trauma. Sometimes it can be done with just you in a book, and sometimes you got to go to a therapist. But, you know, life's a challenge and we should face it.
Okay, for sure.
I truly believe that.
The percentage of gang enhancements and gang-related crimes are going up tremendously. What percentage of youngsters you think that commit these crimes are traumatized, or is it just a trend of a sense of being lonely, or you know, what percentage you think of them doing these crimes are traumatized?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because that's not a question that I have to guess. I've taught trauma in here through the curriculum of the Compassion Prison Project, like I just mentioned. And according to their studies, 95% of all people who come to prison have experienced some type of trauma or scored high in the adverse childhood experiences, which is like a measurement of trauma. Most of us come to prison for trauma, and that's what I'm saying. If you really want to talk about public safety, we got to intervene in these kids' lives, not just lock them up, right? There's like you mentioned a little while ago. There's a lot of potential in here. I found my potential after I was a mess, but I found my potential, and there's a lot of potential in here if we would intervene and help people instead of just locking them up, throwing them away.
Okay, so how far you think the systems with all these movements that they're, you know, the upper echelons are getting this, that it's going to take more than just sending our young men to prison, and that if they teach these same knowledge, why is they still throwing, you know, a lot of young men in jail without giving them classes or, you know, chances where they have to go to programs and get their thought process together, especially with the law being passed, knowing that the brain didn't develop until after 25. So how far you think we, you know, how close you think we reaching the upper echelons to understand that process?
I think we're going at a really slow pace, and I think that the problem is now politics is involved in everything. I'm a advisor for the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights. I work with them. I work with policy. I help change laws. I was part of the Racial Justice Act and a few other things. And being on these calls with legislators and with these lobbyists, sometimes politicians can know the truth, but that's not enough, because it's politics and it's the way they play politics. And I think that too many of our communities are squandering that choice and that chance to weigh in on the politics and have a voice in the politics and make the change that we need. In other words, we have to push. And it takes a collective effort for all of us to get involved. Like, for instance, LA, George Gascon, a lot of people might not look at the politics behind that. But the reason why this very unique prosecutor is in office, somebody who says I'm for everybody and not just certain types of victims, but he sees everybody as victims, is because the people really push for that. And I think that we need to do that across the board. So our legislators need to hear about laws about life without. They need to hear about laws about intervention. They need to hear about laws that will help really heal victims and survivors, right? Because everybody needs healing, everybody's traumatized, and we're just hurting one another over and over and over again like a contagion. So we got to get involved. We got to use our voices in that political space to make sure that our voices are heard and what we want. And if we want change, if we want a rehabilitative system that actually works, then that's what we got to push for.
Okay, so if you again get out tomorrow, what would be the first steps that you'll take, and what kind of people you'll bring on to push that agenda of understanding trauma and understanding the the dynamics of the jail system and why 90% or 95%, I think you said, of the youngsters coming to jail because they've been traumatized. Where do we start at with that?
I think one thing is we need mentors. Too many of us, the reason why so many of us come to prison, like you said, and we get religion or we get educated, is because we didn't have the mentors out there. We get in here, and now we got mentors everywhere. Even Malcolm X, his mentor was Bimby, a guy named Bimby. We need the intervention on the streets out there where the damage is being done, so we can help prevent it, so we can change people's minds. Because whatever the misconceptions of why crime happens, the bottom line is it's the thought process. It's the way we think. I changed the way I think. I changed my whole being. Malcolm X changed the way he thinks. He changed his whole being. He didn't have to change his DNA. He just had to change the way he thinks and how he sees the world. And I think a lot of us have to really sit back and understand the power that we have individually and collectively, and whatever we can do to help the next person, whether it's a single mother that's struggling and the kid feels neglected and joins a gang, or whether it's a whole neighborhood that's going to the left, we got to intervene. We got to help each other.
Okay. Your final words, I appreciate you for blessing the platform. We will have you back, so we can go in depth with that knowledge that you possess. Thank you for blessing the platform.
Yes, and thank you for providing the platform to give us the voice to do that. Wonderful, man. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Top of the day, how y'all doing? It's Abdullah the Black Sheep, BG Ali, loved one. We want to thank the brother Dartel for coming on, sharing his insight on how he helps, those individuals behind these walls gain a better understanding about themselves through various means of self-introspection. So, I don't want this to be long. I know the information that the brother shared with y'all, is something that's heavy on the mind. So again, I want to send my love to him. I want to give my thanks to him and all those that benefit from him. Tap in with him, and let it do what it do. But once again, I'm Abdullah the Black Sheep, BG Ali, much love. And that's on us.
On us. Hashtag because it is.
All the time.